I'll be going to the beach tomorrow, I think.
Well, you're picking a good day. It's going to be hot.
Good. Yeah, every day at the beach.
Well, I would leave early in the morning. Otherwise, you hit lots of traffic, even now.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that, but that's, yeah, thanks. I'm going to visit our friend Ralph.
Oh, really? Oh, that's so nice.
So when do you think you can come by and float, and I'll show you the new property?
Yeah, probably not till towards the end of next week.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'll mark it in my book so we could schedule that.
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll just mark it down right now. What's a good time of day for you, Ken?
Flexible. So yeah, yeah. The float center is open, but just scheduling it in advance. It's
Okay,
just
so good. Let's just keep it open-ended then.
okay. Yeah, it's easy for me to get away on short notice.
Okay, so that's good. I'll just, sometime Thursday, maybe in the afternoon or something like that.
Okay, it's good.
Okay, cool.
You want to float too?
Maybe I'll float too. Yeah,
Yeah, that sounds good.
that sounds very good. Okay. I'm gonna write that down too.
What else is on that hasn't floated yet? I float that question out there. I'd love to hear. If you have or you haven't, whether you got a float center. Let's see who I recognize here that I've seen before. Oh, I see Nicole's on. Have you floated, Nicole? But well, if you're in the New Jersey area, you can come to Quantum. We're in Bedminster. Keep it in mind. Open invite. Those listening. All right, well, yeah, let's give it another. There's going to be some stragglers coming on. I can tell. It's 8:00. It's a little after 8. We'll start in about a minute.
Nicole said she's from Connecticut.
All right.
Not too far away, she says.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see where. Like probably a little more than an hour from Bedminster, maybe more like an hour and a half. So if you're up for the drive, come on down to Quantum Floats. Good road trip. All right. Well, how you doing? How's everybody doing? Lise, you good?
I'm good, thanks. Had a nice day, got my walk in.
Nice. Tonight we're talking about not doing. It's funny, not doing. Seems like a college class that, or maybe every one of my college classes. But this is an interesting concept. Think about this. You're always doing. We're always doing. I'll give you some examples. people come into the float center and they're emphasizing their beta brain waves, that high frequency brainwave associated with logic. It's also associated with where we talk to ourselves. Do we talk to ourselves? At least I know that I did. People will come in and they'll go in a float tank and they'll access this slower, dreamlike, all the way down from the beta brainwave, the to the alpha, to the theta, all the way to a really slow delta brainwave state, and that's where their awareness will be when they're floating, and that's where those self-meta programs are. That's where the things we think are real are. It's a real dreamy place. And then they'll come out of the float tank and they'll be all slow, and we'll serve them a cup of tea because, well, we want to send them home safe. But a pattern, probably won't surprise you, is that, they go back out and they continue talking to themselves. I mean, can you relate? Do you spend a good part of your day, talking to yourself? It's once took a class when I was an undergrad, and I think it was a psychology class, and they said self-talk is a situational impropriety. I think what they meant by that really is that when you're talking to yourself out loud, that would be one of those situations where people would look at you strangely. But I offer to you that self-talk is potentially something that you might want to think about, or the effects on what it does to you, even when you're doing it all by your lonely self, not out loud. Because what ends up happening is we talk to ourselves. We reinforce the way we think about things. We reinforce our programming. So you spend some time in the tank and you have some awareness, and maybe you make an adjustment, but then you can get out of the tank and go do the same thing over and over again. It becomes like a loop, which is why having the language that we're offering here, or a way to understand how your thinking works, you could, if you want, use it as a way to break that loop. And not doing is such a thing. Interesting, right? So today I talked to Pam about building a new float center also in Bedminster. And there's two structures on the property. There's one, this big red building, which is going to house the float tanks, and then there's a house. And the property will probably be ready sometime in the fall. So I was contacted by somebody who asked if I had some space for a friend of theirs who's a traveling nurse. And as a matter of fact, it works out well, because she's from Louisiana, but she's going to be staying in New Jersey, visiting Morristown Hospital here, not too far from the float center, for about 8 weeks. So she needs a place to stay. So it worked out fine. I showed her the place today, and actually I showed it to her about a week ago, but today I gave her the key. And she said that she would Venmo me the rent as soon as she got back to her car. She was moving things in. Well, that didn't happen. And so it's things like that remind me of the importance of this thing called not doing. You see, I know that if that happened to any one of you, just like me, you'd have your typical reaction. Like for me, a very familiar pattern was, I would assume what was going on. I would assume ill intent, or that, how dare them. Where do you go from there? Really, for me, all of those times where I would talk to myself day in and day out about what I think I saw were telling myself a story that had very little, if any, resemblance to what was actually going on. Do you do that much? Do you think about that? I think most people do that. What you're doing there is you're really just reinforcing your existing programming. What if you did something different? Sounds interesting, right? In the Office of Shaman, I think the book, in the Bob story, the teacher offers Bob that if he were to forget his keys or something, papers, I think he should continue on in his day without the papers. And Bob, at first, takes serious offense to that suggestion. But the point is that, how do you break the loop of how you typically react or go about your day if you don't try something different, if you don't do something different? And that's where not doing comes in. So like today was a good example for me because I know that like my pattern's always been, I'm being screwed and, we're off to the races. That may or may not be true. I have no way of knowing. Why would I deprive myself of an opportunity to find out what's really going on? There's a person in my life. She showed up. She's going to be staying in my house. It's true that she said she would do something by a certain time and didn't do it. But why not find out? What's the downside? That's an example of a not doing. That's an example of deliberately doing something different. By doing that, I can break those loops in programming. That's what you could do with it. Why would I want to do that? Because those loops, I don't know, for lack of a better word, they prevent me from seeing what's going on. They prevent me finding out what's really in front of me. Who's there? Why are they there? Why is this showing up in my life? So not doings become, a way that you could explore all those things. That's why I said yesterday that it is in fact, despite its name, it's an action. Who's got an example of a not doing? Who? How about you, Elise? You want to?
Well, I've been talking more like Edith Bunker because when I talk like her, it's a way of, let's call it Whitestone Bridge in electricity, where you find a way to go around the problem. Okay, just say it was congestion on the roads. I have a lot of congestion on my roads. When I talk like I usually talk, I can be such a bitch. People really can't stand me.
Okay.
And I was getting really tired of that. So it was suggested to me that maybe if you talk differently, a little bit more down to where you came from, because I'm a New Jersey girl, that it might be a way to circumvent that bitchy problem I was having and everybody else was having too. So this was a way of not doing the bitchy by just doing something else that took me around it without having to have my programming flow over it.
Okay. And I take it that you find out stuff about yourself when you break out of a pattern.
Yeah, for a long time I had no sense of humor. And I'm finding it be a lot more enjoyable, and I'm finding things to be funny again. So
Yeah.
if I'm more easy and having a good time, I think the people around me are too.
Yeah. I was in the Edith Bunker, for those, that aren't of that genre or that age. I'm probably dating myself. That's All in the Family. I don't know if they have that show anymore, but that was a heck of a show. And Edith and Archie Bunker were the main characters on that show. And I remember, at least with you, uh, there was a time, I think we were in a class where you just tried it on. You were like, all of a sudden out of the blue, you had put on this persona. And I know that, that is funny and interesting and maybe silly as it sounds. I could tell that just doing that different thing allows you to maybe free up, the space or the pathway so that you can say what's really on your mind without filtering it. So while it might sound to other people like a silly thing to do, I will tell you that there's, that having observed Elise do this thing, that there's a noticeable difference in what she does. Yeah, there's so many not doings, but the point is that she's really exploring a way to break those programming loops. Why would you want to do that? Because, you could express who you are more naturally.
Yeah, we talked about, I think, one night, controlled folly. It's a folly. It's okay. Okay, I can play this role, this part, or I can play that part. Well, which one serves me better? Which one makes me easier in the world? So I could say, oh, okay, this is something different from what I usually do. And for me, it's working better. So why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yep.
So if my friends are wondering why all of a sudden I'm talking like Edith Bunker, that's why.
Yeah, I imagine that you might get some looks, but still, it's.
But I think in the long run they appreciate it.
Yeah, because I mean, I can tell that what's coming out is not, you've got a voice to access, to almost bypass this programmatic loop, where you would be bitchy or feel sorry for yourself, and now you put on the character, and if anything, it's like you're freeing an expression or a pathway to clear up, so who you really are, like what's really on your mind. What's on your mind without filtering it.
Well, it's a great shortcut.
Yeah. Shortcut.
Yep. Because I don't have to go through the congestion.
Yeah. Well, we got a slide up that has, we had it. Well, it did. You read it. It had some of the things that you would use not doing for. Recharges what's the first one? Let me move my face. Recharges the energy, or recharges your battery, increases energy, breaks one's programming cycle, buys time for programming. Hey, Terry, can you please put up the upside down pyramid too? Okay. So, anger, to use the example that for me, I was an angry guy, and I thought I hid it, but I know I didn't. I think I told the story of my grandfather asking me when I was around 12, like where that kid that he had witnessed for the first 12 years went, and I proudly puffed up my shoulders and said he was gone, and I know he wasn't gone. It was there. It became more kind of polished in the same sense that my wife and I would go to school for a parent-teacher conference, and the teacher would say that your daughter is so well behaved, and we'd look at each other and say, not in the house. So it's, it was there. Anger for me was a thing. But take a look at the upside down pyramid. That's a fight response at the meta programmatic level. But where does the anger come from? Doesn't come out of thin air. Well, I'm glad you asked. Uh, wouldn't it come from a belief? Wouldn't it come from some experience that I had, from which I decided what's real in the world? Well, I'm glad you asked. As a matter of fact, that is the case. And so from that early childhood experience, deciding some state of affairs, that became the lens through which I looked at the world, and then fill in my stories that I told you about, today, as an example, where I'd be prone, that programmatic loop would run because I would, out of that lens, emphasize perceive, that how dare they? They've transgressed. What an affront. I've been attacked. How dare they not do what this? And off to the races, all righteously justified in my anger, but not to find out. So not doing for me has been an activity, a tool to break out of that. That was a big thing for me. I remember another contractor that I was going to work with missed a series of appointments. And instead of, pulling the guns out of the holster and shooting it up, I took the time to talk to the guy to find out what he was about. Mind you, I'm not saying that I have to trust someone. I do, and I wouldn't suggest, that, I extend the trust, but if it's not coming back, if someone's behaving a certain way, I can be sure that that behavior is going to be really what's going on. It's that their next thing's going to be consistent. But that doesn't mean that I've got to run my own programming loop. I can find out what that's about for them. Maybe give them a hand with where that is for me. That's a not doing. Because to describe it more succinctly, I'd shoot the room up without asking, and ask questions later. One of my partners in my law firm, I'm related to. We come from the same stock. He does the same thing. He makes CP. He's a fabulous person in court, but a lot of that is fueled by that fight response that he has, which is on when he's in court and out of court and talking to his wife and talking to his partners. Okay. So who else? Who else is on here? Let's see. Paul Grenchi, you got a not doing example or some?
Oh, hey, Ken.
Hello there.
Can you hear me okay?
Just fine.
Cool. Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to, talking about not doing, and I saw the list of benefits, and all of those things are 100% true. There's more to it, though, because when you stop doing the things that you normally do, you give other people around you extra space, right? And you'd be surprised sometimes what effect that has on what other people are willing to do and say and communicate when you keep your mouth shut.
Okay. Like you observe what's going on without.
Well, yeah, I stop imposing my own expectations on the situation.
That makes
If
sense.
that makes sense, yeah.
Nice. Have you practiced this not doing thing? I take it you have, and you do.
Yeah, I mean, I find it's easier to do when you aren't trapped in beta land all the time. When you're not rushed and unthinking about your actions, if you can slow down a little bit, which is why floating is so nice. And
Yeah.
I did hear you're getting ready to open, right, Ken?
Yeah, we're going to be opening on Monday.
Fantastic. I'm long overdue. I think I might have to swing by.
You should, yeah. Strangely, I'm one of the closer. There aren't a lot of float centers.
Nowadays, yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. And I wonder what, like, we just talked about differences, and now we're talking about something that, not doing is different because it's different than what you normally do. But maybe John can come on and give a hand. I'm thinking about, like, what are the parameters, or like, how do where do how do I take this discussion we've been having about differences and now bring it to not doing and present not doing as something that, is different than differences, if I'm saying that right.
I don't really know what you're saying. So can you,
All right.
can you give me a couple more clues?
Yeah. So in one sense, not doing seems very similar to differences. Because when we do something that is,
No. I know that you've struggled with that concept, but that's not true.
okay,
What's the not doing of a sale?
the not doing what's the not doing of a sale?
Yeah. I have a friend in Ahihik that is, I mean, he's a great salesman, right? He's been there doing it for a long time. And he has this really strange way of selling a house. He opens a door, he goes and picks up, if people come to his office, takes them out to the house. He opens the door and he goes out to the front porch and he sits down and he looks at the lake. And when they find him, he said, "Oh, did you like the place? You want to go see that next place? Nice view here, right?" And that's his entire sales pitch. Just sells the hell out of real estate.
Mm.
But it's really a not doing because he doesn't sell anything. I mean, he does what he sells is a lifestyle. He doesn't sell the property, and so he approaches the sale of the property as a sale of the sale of the property by selling the lifestyle, and he does that by doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a not doing of, I guess, what you could say a sale, even though it is a sale.
Yes, it is. So, but it's a proper not doing it, and that's the thing that you need to consider. A not doing has to balance a thing that's done. Okay, so let's say that you react to somebody that is just all the time trying to bust your chops, like Ralph was talking about that a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And so there's a not doing, there's an appropriate not doing for that person, right? Rather than reacting, you act, but perhaps you act in a way that's completely outside of what he thinks. Maybe you, instead of you being angry, maybe you walk up to him and say, I know it's coronavirus, but I'm really quite free. But even though I want to give you a big old sloppy one on the mouth, I'm just gonna hug you. That's a not doing, right? Because who the hell would think about doing something like that to get somebody's attention? Well, nobody. Why would you do it? Well, I would, because I'm a twisted fuck. But that I'm the only one that would think that kind of stuff. See. But then I think about not doing a lot because I got to talk to people that some of them are relatively difficult to talk to. Under any other condition, I would call them hard-headed.
Mm-hmm. I've met a few.
Yeah.
I've been a few.
Some of them I would go so far as to call them ignorant sons of a bitches, but they're pretty rare anymore. It's hardly ever there.
Okay. Come here. meet some of the locals.
Okay, cool.
But anyway, so
Yes, please go ahead.
so you said I think you used the word proper,
Yes, proper.
right?
Because it matches something that's being done. It's matching it's like a perfectly matched counterweight or countercharge or balance or something, if you'd like.
Yeah, to something that you're doing.
Or even something somebody
Something
else is
that's
doing.
done.
Or something that you're reacting to. Just
Right.
different kinds of things that you can apply. None of these ideas are like, applied to simply a thing. They're an idea and they all have to do with how relationships go together. All of them. When you first start thinking about them, I did at least. I had to think about them in series. You know, I had to think about one after the other, and then later I could think about them in parallel. But my brain exploded before that a couple times. Or at least my head exploded a couple times before that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I think in the sense of
I've been rambling on and not doing information. Did you like that?
yeah, I did notice that. Maybe in the sense of like if I studied the circulatory system and the parasympathetic nerve, and the sympathetic nervous system, and maybe if I remember my biology, there was a sequential way that we approach that. But if you think about it, there's nothing sequential about that.
I used to know this girl that had a sympathetic nervous system. Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know. Well, I have to be careful here. Otherwise, we're going to digress into a paramount not doing. Maybe that's all right. Did I know a girl? Yeah, I guess no. I don't think I'm talking about that girl.
Okay, good. Because
You never know.
she was a sympathetic mess. No doubt about it. Hot mess, but sympathetic mess nonetheless. Okay.
For what purpose would you do these? I mean, I think you poked at it, if not stated it before. Like why would you? Why this tool? What what does this tool accomplish for you?
What it does is it lets me figure out how I actually think about things. It demonstrates it for me.
Okay. All right. Well, then let me put that into what I said before.
Hey, I don't mind.
Um, a not doing of shooting up the room is a hey, how you doing? What's going on? Is a finding out kind. That would be a appropriate not doing. Well, that has been for me an appropriate not doing for the doing of shooting up the room.
See, to me, it would be something else. Let's first of all let's establish why you're shooting up the room. What was that about?
Yeah,
Come on. Don't be back.
I dare those you have transgressed the grand how did what are you kidding me?
Okay, so the transgression came in the form of what exactly? What was the nature of the sin?
The nature of the sin was behavior which here goes is behavior which I thought here comes the judgment. Ready?
It's okay. Go ahead.
That my standards have been violated of
standards mostly your
behavior.
standards of what? Masculinity, your standards
standards
of femininity, your standards of wifeyism, your standard of bring me a beerism, what?
How about this one? Standard of how I demanded people treat me. How about that?
Well, yeah, that's going to be the thing, but about what? They patted you on the back. They didn't pat you on the back. You didn't want them to pat you on the back, and they did. What?
Yeah.
Different folks is what I've heard.
Yeah, I think that with the example of the contractors, and so those were the interpretation there. Although the opposite, I mean, it wasn't just an interpretation. They didn't keep their word. Okay.
Right.
And so I took offense to that.
That of your personal level of of macho lawyer
Yes.
correctness, as it were.
That's important for you to say, right? That's important for me to see too, because what's really to take offense to?
Well, I don't know, but
It's not my programming, it's their programming.
yeah, okay, well, that's cool. And their programming is no doubt offensive, and it smells bad to boot. Okay, so
Okay.
let's pretend as though that's all as it actually is there, then, shall we?
Sure.
And then let's say that well, and not doing would be to counterbalance that terrible importance somehow or the other, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Bus rides come to mind as a balance to that kind of thing.
Yep.
Now, without getting into details, what exactly was that counterbalance about there for you?
Okay. I'm slow today. Bus rides come to mind. Yes. That's yes, I've taken
Yeah, no, I don't want to talk about that.
okay, right. But what is that but what was that about? Well,
What was the counterbalance there?
well, what was
I mean,
the
there was anger, right?
there was anger, but the counterbalance was I don't know, I want to say like consideration, because
No, it was the utter futility of the anger.
okay, okay, I could see that. Yeah, because the anger would be fever pitched sometimes, only to
But for what purpose? None whatsoever.
none. That's where I poked my head out every once in a while and said, "What the fuck is this loop? What am I? You know, what is this about? You know, I'm in my own anger play here.
Right.
I'm the leading actor of an anger play that I wrote."
Okay.
But yeah,
But it took extreme futility for you to see that. That's a proper not doing.
extreme futility.
Well, in this particular instance, it was.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, extreme futility. Maybe what you're saying, if I'm following, is it took me to observe extreme futility as a not doing to.
No, not necessarily. It was if we just think about it in terms of energy, nothing else.
Okay.
The extreme futility energy absolutely perfectly counterbalanced the excessive anger that you dumped upon the world at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that extreme futility as an energetic counterbalance.
That's what a not doing is.
Yeah.
And so therefore what you asked about was what was released was the energy governed by natural mind function. You could see how you were actually thinking about things and how you wanted to think about things and what was actually natural for you, which wasn't the anger.
Yeah. That's right. That is not doing teaches us about what's natural for us, what expression is natural.
It's the natural mind function. What's actually there.
Yeah.
I mean, we we can not do for ourselves. We can stalk ourselves to make that occur. We can also be on the receiving end from somebody doing that as well. Both things can take place.
Mhm.
In fact, both things probably have to take place for that learning to move from interlock with the excitation to being able to resolve the issues surrounding the excitation or the threat.
Okay. Would you say then, in thinking about that upside down pyramid,
Yeah.
that not doing is clearing a pathway, an energetic pathway? It's dealing with the places where we piss away energy and things that aren't, I'm going to say, natural, like blame and anger. And well, maybe anger could be natural, but I'm really talking about the part where we perceive a threat and there's no real threat to back it up. Is that what the not doing is, clearing that pathway for us so that we can see where it is that we trip ourselves up?
Not necessarily clearing that pathway. It's what it's doing is it's just breaking the interlock with where it is that we are not thinking with our natural mind function. That always causes a frenzy or an excitation interlock. You called it an anger.
Yeah.
It's rather like Chinese water torture. You know, that drip 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 thing. I've never done that, but they say it could be excruciating after a month or so. I don't have that kind of time to find out, but I'll take their word on it. Apparently, it happens faster, but I don't. I'm just too impatient. What can I tell you?
Yeah. Well, in that example, I think you're saying that the anger is like the Chinese water torture, drip, drip, drip.
Yeah, it's not really the anger as much as it's the frustration because you can't resolve it. You know, how can you resolve something that when you're interlocked with it?
No, yeah, I
That
could not.
most of the arguments that you talk about with Maria were not arguments about a thing. It was an ongoing argument that never got resolved, and so it just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, especially since yeah, there's no thing there. There's nothing. I mean, maybe there were events and things, but it was never that because it was ongoing. You know,
Right.
I'm not sure what to say about other than unresolved.
What was the not doing that started to break that?
I think the not doing was, say it, you know, easing up on myself or not taking myself seriously.
Oh, bullshit. Most girls got this. Some girls got this, especially them that live in the trailer park, got little gold chains go around the neck with this thing on it. You know, a little dingle dangle that just dangles on there. It says this thing here. It started with the bitch, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that was the not doing.
What are you saying that? I mean,
When you figure that one out, then we'll have that conversation.
okay.
Between here and there, I better just hush my mouth.
Okay. Well,
Slap my grandma.
all right. Let me take a stab at it then, at least. I don't know.
Excuse me.
I don't. In all the places where I would think, bitch. We're always a dance that I was,
Hey, Ken,
Nope.
did anybody ever tell her that?
oh, yeah, I do recall that happened.
Yeah, it actually was not something that was something that was done regular for her, right?
Oh, John Worthington, that was not a regular occurrence by any means.
I know, I know. In fact, what it demonstrated is that she could be way more angry at me than she was at you.
Okay. I think you're presenting this in something to look at as I don't know, as maybe a turning point event. It's hard for me to see it like that, though.
Not doing so mostly are if they're properly done. But okay, I digress because I'm talking about stuff that I shouldn't really be talking about.
Yeah,
Well,
I don't mind.
looks like you're doing a little not doing with Ken right there.
No, I'm not doing anything at all.
You're a tough one to pin down tonight, John Worthington, with all of your not doings.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad that you're observant.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
So, okay. Well, what else? Let's see. I suppose I could point out that
I think, Ken, one thing you were going to talk about is why would anybody care if they're expressing that natural mind function? Like, why is that important?
do tell. Do you have a opinion on that?
I'm going to go here in a few minutes because I'm going to another podcast. So.
Okay. Well, thanks for hanging with me.
Talk to you later.
Good night, Jen.
What do you think there, Terry? Why would anybody engage?
Well, for one thing, it can accomplish a lot more than I know this from my own. It can accomplish a lot more than trying to do everything in lists and logic and explaining. I mean, it's where we actually think from. But how do you know what it's capable of if you're just caught up in the same little loops?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd be saying the same thing maybe if I said it this way.
Okay.
There's, something I am that, there's, where does the Ken Kaplanness or the Terry Stengel or the Elise Comiskey or the Paul Grenshi or the Pam or Nicole's on and other people are on, where, who are you really, and where do you do things like I did, where I prevent myself from expressing who I am or finding out how I do, how I do things, where, and like for you, T, and I know you're familiar with this as much as I am, that, like, it's like almost like, who are you? How do you find out really who you are if you're not breaking the loops where you're putting on king's clothes? That, well, what I mean by that is, if you're pretending to be something or trying to be something or getting offended at something until you break that loop, how do you express who you really are? For me, it was mostly anger. John says that the not doing of anger was the futility of that, what I was doing. And that's true. I hadn't thought about it that way, that there came a point where futility was really the thing that was in my mind more than the anger, because I kept catching myself, and I'd catch myself more regularly. Sometimes it'd be off to the races, and as John says, we get interlocked with things. You want to get, just think about the people that you're close with, and think about the things that you may observe that they do and say, and think about how sometimes you reach some conclusion of how dare they, or if you're like me or whatever. Yeah, those are places, like for me, where I was interlocked with something, but the futility, that not doing of anger, allowed me to break out of that. But why? Terry's asking the question, why would I want to do that? Well, because there's someone or behind that. There's actually there's a soul behind that that's trying to express. It ain't natural for me to be an angry motherfucker. I couldn't talk to people. I couldn't relate. I wasn't getting along. So I think this not doing about that.
Hey, Ken, have you defined interlock tonight? I mean, you guys are using it a lot, and it probably means something more to you
Yeah, I
than to some other folks.
You're right. Do you want to lay it out?
Well, I was going to let you start with that, and we'll talk about it.
All right. So, let's see how to say this. Because one way to say it is excitation causes interlocked. You get excited about something, you get interlocked with it. I've got someone standing in front of me. I perceive, let's highlight the perceive, some sort of threat, and all of a sudden I'm interlocked, and there's nothing else I can see. It's almost like, an animal being interlocked with a prey, or a boxer being interlocked with an opponent, except one difference being that the interlock often I'm interlocked, or I've been interlocked, or people get interlocked because they don't with someone else for no actual threat that's there. They're excited, but what are you excited about? Let me put it this way. Sex is an excitation. It is. Does it cause excitation causes interlock? Yeah, it does. I'm personally thankful that excitation causes interlock in some instances, but not so much in others. Because this anger thing for me was I'd get excited, and then I'd be interlocked with the person who's standing in front of me. I couldn't see anything. It's all of a sudden, it's like nothing else matters except, motherfucker, game on. What do you think about that?
That's pretty good, and I don't think it's possible to even consider not doing when you're trapped with the interlock.
Yeah, damn fucking straight, man. That one was.
Yeah.
That
was a long bus ride, right, Ken?
Yeah, that is. I've had times where I've had to really think about that for prolonged periods of time.
Yeah.
Yep. Have you, I suppose I'm not a special case here. I know I'm not. But I know it's a thing, people that I deal with, and that, they get interlocked with all sorts of things. Look what's going on these days. You think we're interlocked. I think the absence of dialogue that we're witnessing has very much to do with excitation causes interlock. Motherfucker, how dare you say that thing? You don't, and wow, well, good luck with the communication from that point of view. I think we're in this collective not doing. Hey.
You think that interlock is always anger?
No, I don't think it is. Interlock in sex is not anger.
Well, you're talking about things as if interlock is always going to be an angry thing, instead it could be a running away thing, or
Well, at least that's actually a great point. And I think for Ken, anger is his primary interlock concern.
I was just pointing it out so the other people would know that that's not the only way it occurs.
Yeah,
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
absolutely.
It could be I don't feel I'm less than. It could be any kind, all kinds of things.
Sure.
It can be learning something. It can be you're so excited, engaged in learning something.
Okay. Yep. So how are we using it then? So excitation causes interlock. Are we? We're not. Are we always interlocked with the external reality? I think the answer is no. We're not. We don't have to be.
Well, there's plenty of things in external reality that are neutral for me. There are other things that are not so much.
By the way, for those that we haven't used the term much, external reality. Let's set that one up too, so we can be consistent with language here. Defining for ourselves internal and external reality is handy. It's not something that I had ever considered before. I had thought about that perception is the best we could ever do. It's the best, despite these things here that I call eyes. They're not windows to the world. All I ever do and all you ever do is perceive. That means that you're filtering what's on the outside and interpreting it. That also means that it's subject to mistakes or inaccuracies. And as neuroscience is prone to say, our perceptions are not only unreliable, they're inherently unreliable. Well, let's now say that what we perceive things to be, we'll call internal reality. That would be things like me perceiving a threat where no threat exists, my internal reality. But does that mean that that was what was going on the outside? For me, no, that's not what was going on the outside. And so there was a disconnect or an imbalance between internal reality, what I perceived, and what was actually going on. You got some of that yourself, anybody? And you bet you do. Everybody does. Not a, it's not a bad thing. Who cares? It's just a matter of do you want to bring it into balance? Good. It's legal. I'm a lawyer. Nobody's gonna. Yeah, I've checked the books, and it's okay to spend time bringing your internal and external reality in balance. I think you would then be dealing with this interlock thing. It's kind of one way to say that. If you're bringing it in balance, then you're checking and making sure, is there really a threat there?
Well, you know what's funny, Ken? I mean, I don't know how it went for you, but for me, I always assumed that my internal reality was a direct match to the external reality.
Seems right. Me too. Why not?
I was flabbergasted when I even had the room in my mind to consider that that wasn't actually true.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Here's a good pictorial reference as to why it might not be true. Hey, Terry, can we put up the upside down pyramid again?
Sure, right, just a sec.
And we're going to look at this same representational model of thoughts, of levels of thought, of different parts of thought. And remember, at the bottom of it, inside your brain, in terms of programs, you've got like an operating system level. Self-meta program, that's like your operating system, the things you believe is real. You're not even aware that that's the lens. You can't be, by definition, but you can't see what you're looking with. Yet, those things you believe are real are driving your meta programs, your emotions. So when Ken Kaplan finds a fight or anger out there, as John was asking me, where does that come from? Requires that I take a look below that at the self-meta program, because your angers and emotions aren't coming out of thin air. And then above that, that meta program level is the one that affects the programs right above it. It's like a direct Self-meta programs work on the meta programs. Meta programs in turn work on the programs right above it, like your feelings and things. Look at the very top. That's your logic. This is the thing that Paul was kind of talking about, at least how I see it. The very logic people use to say, no, 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 you don't understand me, motherfucker. I was at that meeting. You don't know my mother, or you don't know my father, or you don't know my boyfriend, or you don't know what happened. You weren't there, and I watched it, and he said this, and I said that. Well, this model shows that that logic that you use way up there at top is no more reliable than anything on the bottom. And if you got something funky, like I think most of us do down at the self-meta program level, the belief, then that's working its way all the way up. That's interesting, right? What else? Any questions? Other comments? Then we're going to come back on Monday and talk more about not doing.
Can you give us all a little homework for the weekend, Ken? What do you think?
Well, if you haven't read the chapter, that would be great. You could read the chapter, you could listen to it. If you were so bold, or here's not doing, because me asking questions was not always something that I did. Me assuming I knew the answer, well, that was a familiar thing for me as a kid. But actually asking the question and checking it, that was a really good not doing. So if you're going to read the chapter and you could ask a question, that would be an excellent not doing. Yeah. Be fun.
Or even drive a different way to a place or from back from a place.
Yeah, that too. Exactly. Practice not doing.
Just something that's not usual.
Yep.
Don't get your usual flavor of ice cream.
Yep.
Try something else.
Yep. As strange as what she said. I mean, Lisa's trying on a whole new voice, and I think you can think it not doing in terms of really every action, everything you do has a not doing, and that extends to how you think about things or how you react. Your typical reactions. Do something different. Try it on. See what happens. For homework. How about that? We'll see you on Monday.
Awesome. Thanks, Ken.
Happy Father's Day to the dads out there, and
You too.
Yeah, for you too. Yeah.
Okay.
Have a good weekend. See you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.